In this slide, we are going to see the characters from the poem Alexander, Alexander's Feast. The first character of this poem is Alexander the Great. Now we have to see who was the Alexander the Great. Alexander III of Macedon. He was king of Macedonia, Pharaoh of Egypt, king of Persia, and lord of Asia in 4th century BCE. While throwing a feast at Persepolis, Persepolis is a capital city of Persia. Just remember, here he was giving the feast, grand party, Persepolis. What is the occasion? Because he has defeated the Persian king Darius. So, to enjoy that defeat, he was giving the feast. So, while throwing a feast at Persepolis, Alexander falls under the influence of songs performed by Timotheus, his musician. Whose musician? Alexander the Great's musician. These songs, together with the intoxication by wine, means he was listening the song and also drinking a wine, encourages his feelings of vengeance. Means this song enchanted the king and create a feeling of vengeance, violence. And as a result, together with Thias means his beloved, Thias, he sets fire to Persepolis. At the end of this poem, set fire to the capital city of Persia, that is a Persepolis. So that is the character of Alexander the Great. Now the second character, Timotheus. Who is Timotheus? As we know, he is a bard, he is a musician, he is a singer in this poem. Timotheus is a bard who performs at Alexander's feast at Persepolis. Perform means sing a song, presented his music. Through his songs, Timotheus manipulates Alexander. We can see through his songs, Timotheus control Alexander. Timotheus influence Alexander. This eventually leads to Alexander's impulsive decision to burn down Persepolis. See, because of Timotheus' songs and events, what we can say, content presented or idea presented in that song, Alexander enchanted a lot. He lost his consciousness, and lastly, with that feelings of what we can say anger, he burned the capital city of Persia, that is Persepolis. The third character is Thias. We know Thias is the beloved of Alexander the Great. Thias is a beautiful woman in this poem portrayed as Alexander's lover. Together they set fire to Persepolis. Jove is the another character. He is a godlike, or we can say a spirit in the poem. So spirit are always presented in a heroic poem, or what we can say in a epic. So in this poem, this is a satiric poem, and in this poem he has also presented the spirit. So Jove, the god of the sky and thunder. Jove is the god of the sky and thunder. There might be question, objective question, what Jove represented. So he represented god of the sky and thunder. He is also a king of the Roman gods, all the Roman gods. As we know in Hinduism, who is the god of God? So Brahma is the god of all gods. So in that way, he is the god of which god? Roman gods. Now Olympia. Who is the Olympia? Olympia is the mother. Whose mother? Mother of Alexander the Great. Olympia is the mother of Alexander the Great. Now the Helen we always read, heard, she is related to the war of Troy. So Helen of Troy, wife of King Menelaus, her abduction by Paris was the cause of the Trojan War. Cecilia, Saint Cecilia, who is believed to have created the first organ. She is also one kind of a spirit. Darius III, the king of Persia, in 4th century BC, he was defeated by Alexander the Great. The Furies, Roman deities of vengeance, who are described as having snakes for hair. Means the Furies means are some deities or spirit, the presence of the godlike figure in the poem. Grecian ghosts, the spirit of soldiers who died in the battle with Persia and have not been properly buried. So, Grecius ghost. Bacchus or Bacchus, the Roman god of wine, winemaking, and religious ecstasy. So, these are the character. Now, we have to see the summary of the poem. The present poem written in the memory of Saint Cecilia's day. I have mentioned the word in the memory means commemoration means in the memory. Did you get the meaning? Commemoration means in the memory of Saint Cecilia's day. When it is written in 1697. Alexander the Feast is the main title of the poem, and the poem has a subtitle, and subtitle is The Power of Music. The poem is about the ability of music to influence human emotion and behavior. What is poem? The poem is about the ability, we can say, influence, we can say, importance of music, how music influence human being, how music arouse the emotions and feelings of human beings, how music change the behavior of the human being. So music is powerful, that is presented in this poem, giving a fictionalized account. Fictionalized means a fictitious, yes, we can say a historical event. So fictionalized account, Alexander the Great, on the occasion of his victory over Persia under King Darius. An anonymous speaker of this poem, as are you getting what I am telling? This poem is about one historical incident. What was the historical incident? The king of Macedonia, Alexander the Great, has defeated the king of Persia, Darius, and to celebrate that day, he was giving the feast. So that is the fictionalized account or an incident. This poem does not have any specific speaker. Speaker is anonymous. Anonymous means a name is not given. And that speaker describes What he describes, how different parts of a musical performance at the event elicit means influence, what we can say enchanted different emotional responses from the king, and how the performance eventually encourages him means a king and his people means king's people to destroy the Persian capital. See, he was giving the feast, and in that feast there is one music. The Timotheus, Alexander the Great's musician, was singing, and that music influenced the king and his followers. That music arouses the different emotions and feelings of the king and his followers, and because of that musical enchantment, because of that musical power, at the last king, his lover, and his follower, all of them destroy the capital city of Persia, that is Persepolis. See, what is the first stanza? In the first stanza, speaker describes the temporal and spatial settings of the event. Temporal means a timing, a time. What is the time of this poem? Spatial means what is the space, means where the poem is set, which incident is presented in the poem. We have seen what is the spatial setting, so Persia. What is the timing? Timing is the fighting between the Alexander the Great and Darius, Macedonian king and Persian. So that is the time and space of the poem, and introduces several main characters of the poem. Who are the main characters are also presented in the first stanza of the poem, as well as what is the setting of the poem is presented, and what is the time of the poem is also presented. According to the opening lines, means in the first stanza, what is there in the opening lines? Macedonia's military victory against Persia under the leadership of Alexander the Great, and they has provided an occasion for communal festivity. So what is there in the first stanza? In the first stanza, we as a reader, we as a student to study this poem come to know that in the first stanza we come to know Macedonia's military means the military force of Alexander the Great defeated the Persian military, Persian soldiers, and the Persian king Darius. And these lines have also provided means tales after that war. Alexander the Great was enjoying his victory, and he gives the feast, that is a communal feast. That is one, what we can say, a festival. Describing the opulent royal feast. Opulent royal means a Raj Darbari चाललेला program, a grand program, or a festive, or a feast, a party, we can say a grand party. The speaker glorifies the godlike king, means speaker means that singer, glorifies means praises, glorifies means presented the character of king in a positive way. He praises, he gives a good comment, a positive comment regarding the king. So glorifies the godlike king. Who is the king? Alexander the Great. His valiant men means his soldiers. He also means that speaker also praises his soldier. And his beautiful lover means king's lover. Who is the king's lover? Thais. Also, that speaker declares that one but the brave deserves the fear of a feast held by. Declares that none but the one brave deserves the fear. Means that Thais. Who is the brave? Brave is the king. So who is deserving that fear? Fear means that Thais, that lady, that beloved. King is deserving that beloved of a feast held by. See. This is the first stanza. Now we are moving towards the second stanza. What is the second stanza? In the first stanza now we come to know all the characters. In the first stanza now we come to know what is the incident. In the first stanza we come to know what is the timing. All these things we come to know from the first stanza. Now we are going to study the second stanza. So in the second stanza, now we are going to study about the musician or music, how the music of Timotheus influenced the king and his soldier. Timotheus, the bard of the event, and describes the beginning of his congratulatory performance. Congratulatory means what we can say a praise to the king. So in the second stanza, just the beginning of the poem, music is started there, and there Timotheus congratulate the performance of the king. The bard's song means Timotheus' song, celebrating King Alexander's birth as the son of Olympia. We have seen what is the son, means what Olympia means. And the Roman god Jove receives an enthusiastic response from the members of the audience who glorify the king as a deity. So in the second stanza, when the music started, at that time Timotheus as a musician praises his king, means Alexander the Great. He has started his song from the birth of King Alexander, and he said, who is the mother of Timotheus, who is the mother of King Alexander? The mother of King Alexander is Olympia, and for that the Roman god Jove is present, receives an enthusiastic response from the members of the audience who glorify the king as a deity. See the next slide. In the stanza third, takes the poem to the hedonistic segment of Timotheus' performance, which evokes Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. Who is Bacchus or Bacchus? The Roman god of wine, the god of wine, and celebrates inebriation, festivity, and the sweet pleasure that comes after pain. See, in the third stanza, what was there means how that song is influencing, enchanting to all the listener. Hedonistic segment means some kind of difficult. We can say not a difficult. Hedonistic segment means a incident event. Hedonistic means a dangerous of Timotheus' performance. There is a wine in the party, and all the soldiers as well as king, all of them are drinking a lot that wine. There is also the Roman god of wine, that is Bacchus, who is present in that feast, and celebrates inebriation, festivity, festival season, and sweet pleasure after pain. How it comes? It comes after the war. So that comes after pain. Which pleasure? Sweet pleasure comes after the pain, after the war. In the fourth stanza, the poem takes a turn in stanza 4 when this celebration of victory and pleasure seeking inspires great hubris in King Alexander. Pleasure king seeking inspire great hubris in King Alexander. See, in the fourth stanza, what was happened there? The bard means a musician means a Timotheus, then decides to perform a song that will help Alexander reflect upon the tragedy that he has caused by brutally murdering and abandoning the body of his enemy Darius. Now a joyless victor, Alexander looks back on his brutality with remorse, shedding tears of grief. Means through the stanza, sorry, through the song, Timotheus forces Alexander to remember his brutality, his cruelty, how he killed the king. So what we can say, force him to remember. He make him to remember all these things, and that's why the king become a remorse, become a melancholic, and he was shedding tears in regret. In stanza 5th, Timotheus notices this change of heart and shifts the subject matter of his song again to that of love, gratitude, and pacifism. See, in the stanza 4th, poet have changed, sorry, the musician have changed the subject. He was talking about the love, he was talking about the beauty, and he was praising to the beloved of the king, so that again there is a change into the subject as well as there is a change into the behavior of the king and his follower. Timotheus prompts the monarch means the king, to recognize how grateful he must be, for instance, for the relationship he has with his beautiful lover Thais. Both the audience, who applaud passionately, and Alexander, who tearfully sings upon Thais' breast, are moved by this song. Stanza 6 marks yet another dramatic transition in the poem as Timotheus begins to sing of revenge, stirred to an anger as a result of this song. The king, his lover, and his followers set the capital of Persia on fire as an act of vengeance. Stanza 7 closes the poem with the speaker's reflection upon this series of events. The speaker expresses a sense of wonder towards Timotheus' ability to manipulate human emotion by means of music and compares it to Catholic martyr Saint Cecilia's ability to invent a musical instrument, the organ, that perfects humankind's musical knowledge and connects the divine with the earthly. Now we are going to see the analysis of the poem. I am analyzing the poem to understand it to you, because you should understand the themes and you should be able to write something. Alexander's Feast is both an ode and a narrative poem, means both kind of poem it is, and thus features a rich combination of lyrical elements. Means it is also a musical, it is also a Narrative means a long poem. The rhythms and jingles that make this poem pleasant to the ear. Means rhythms are there so that we are pleased to listen. Or this poem is what we can say. We want to listen this poem. And plot elements, the dramatic transition and ironies that arrest the attention of the reader. What are the qualities? Plot elements are there. There is a dramatic transitions means this poem is creating, means it is not a music but it creating in front of us a picture like a drama. There are some ironies also in this poem. In terms of its plot, what about the plot? The poem can be divided into four different parts. Poem can be divided into four different parts if we think about the plot. Stanza first to third, scenes of festivity and hedonism. What is there in stanza from the beginning to the third stanza? Festival season and hedonism. Stanza fourth and fifth, scenes of mourning and penitence. As we know, he has created means he force through his means Timotheus force through his song to Alexander to remember his act of cruelty and brutality, how he murdered the king of Persia, Darius. So, through that song, he forced him to remember, and now King Alexander become melancholic. He thought he is a brutal person, he is a cruel person, he should not kill in this way. In that way, there are some emotion in his mind. So, stanza fourth and fifth is talking about mourning and penitence. Penitence means we can say pachata. Pachata. Stanza 6, scene of vengeance and violence. Last stanza 6, vengeance means we can say badla, vengeance, uh, anger, violence, anger. The stanza 7, the speaker's analysis. So these fourth part, the plot is divided into this fourth part. The first three stanzas provide the backdrop to the poem's narrative. Means in the first three stanza, what is there? There is an what we can say background to the poem narration, as they describe the pleasure, hubris, and excess involved in the beginning of Alexander the Great celebration of his military success. Means enthusiastic celebration of that feast in the first three stanzas. Descriptions in the part of the poem are focused on images of visual and auditory extravagance, such as the brooch of Alexander Spears adorned with roses and with myrtles, or the majestic opening of Timotheus' song, which inspires ecstasy and passion in its listeners. The trembling notes ascend the sky, and heaven rejoices inspire. These are the lines from the poem. The trembling notes ascend the sky, and heaven rejoices inspires. So, how Timotheus opens his poem is presented. What is given is there, what kind of description is there in the poem? In the poem, poet have created a visual images, we can say a visual drama in the poem. While reading or listening that song, we can visualize action presenting in front of us. So that kind of technique poet John Dryden have used in his writing. That's why he is a great poet. These scenes of jubilation means enjoy. These scenes of jubilation are accompanied, however, by the onset of a dangerous sense of hubris. While Timotheus' performance is dedicated to the deities, celebrating Jove's sovereignty and Bacchus' euphoria. These invocations lead to pride rather than religious humility, as they encourage Alexander to assume the god and the audience to exalt him as a present deity. At this point in the narrative, the king and his people are oblivious to their own vainglory, to their own vainglory, as though mirroring the opulence of the feast. Stanza first to third feature a plethora of lyrical devices that evoke feelings of joy and ecstasy. Means in stanza first three stanza, poet have used plethora means so many multiple lyrical devices, technique of poem, and that techniques evoke, arouse our feelings of joy and ecstasy. The exuberant rhythmicality of the introduction is compressed into the first two lines. A heroic couplet, a rhythmic couplet in ballad meter, a line in iambic tetrameter followed by another in iambic trimeter. See ballad meter, tetrameter and trimeter. So this poem is written in a ballad meter, and we can see musical quality of this poem from the first two lines. These are written in a rhythmic way. The occasional variation in iambic diameter means sometimes poet have used diameter, sometimes in the poem. See, examples are given. None but the brave, with ravish airs the monarch hears. As well as the use of alliteration. Alliteration, this is also one technique, one device, figure of speech used by the poet in the poem. For example, with flying figures touch the lyre. See, fly figure, first sound is repeated, so that is an alliteration. With flying figures touched the lyre. And assonance are also there. So what is an assonance? Sound the trumpets, beat the drums, beat the drum means the use of consonant for each and every word, flushed with a purple grace, amplify the buoyant mood. The second part of the narrative, stanza 4 and 5, marks a transition from ecstatic celebration to repentance and mourning. Ecstatic celebration means joyful celebration. Poem turn from joyful celebration to the sorrowful condition, means repentance and mourning. Once Timotheus detects the hubris rising in King Alexander, his song transforms into an elegy, which could perhaps form a separate poem on its own. Means in the poem, poet have written some stanzas, and these stanzas are like an elegy, mourning the tragic death of King Darius, and then to a philosophical musing upon both the futility of war and the need for gratitude, love, and peace. So, in this second part, poet have written in such a way that the reader reminds the futility of the war. How that Alexander was cruel, how he killed, brutally murdered the king Darius, and now he is repenting, he is regretting, he is thinking about his own action and feeling regretful. Again, he is thinking, who king is thinking that war is not the final solution of the humanity, but there should have a gratitude, love, and peace. So this is in the second part, stanza fourth and fifth. The most conspicuous narrative element of this section is the situational irony in which King Alexander, in response to the performance, cries for the death of Darius. Cries for the death of Darius, defying the reader's expectations. The war hero, who has been celebrating his triumph, begins to display not only empathy for his enemy but also great emotional vulnerability. In this slide, the shift in content across stanza 4 and 5 is accompanied once again by tonal and phonetic changes. While the content of the song shifts from celebratory to didactic. The repetitions in stanza 4, for example, fallen, 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 fallen from his high estate, as well as those in stanza 5, still ending, beginning, fighting, destroying, winning, enjoying, shade and look augment both the emphatic voice of Timotheus and the intensity of Alexander's epiphany. The polysyndeton, that is the use of conjunctions in succession, use in lines such as and now and then a sigh he stole, and tears began to flow, or and sighed and looked, sighed and looked, sighed and looked and sighed again. Slow down the pace of the poem and creates an atmosphere that is appropriate for lamentation and reflection. So that is the use of polysyndeton. Stanza 6 then puzzles the reader with its rapid transition to a destructive erosion scene that marks the climax of the poem. When Alexander and his people, thrilled by the thundering sounds of Timotheus' lyre, proceed to burn down the city of Persepolis, the poem too turns toward vengeance, anger, and violence. The sudden turn illustrates two different effects of music. First, it proves how easily music can manipulate the emotions and actions of its listeners. Second, it shows that music can inspire a broad spectrum of emotions, ranging from the joy and bliss of stanza 1 to 3 to the girl, grief and gratitude in stanza 4 and 5. Now to the destructive but perhaps also cathartic, that is furious joy, rage of stanza 6. Meanwhile, the climax of the poem is enriched with allusions and mythological allegories such as Timotheus' reference to the Furies, Roman deities of vengeance, and the speaker's comparison between the beautiful and aggressive Thais and Helen of Troy, a woman whose beauty is known for having initiated the Trojan War. As with previous stanza, the musicality of stanza 6 approximates its content. The rapid and aggressive trimeter lines and unburied remain to the valiant crew hurled upon the reader one after another mimic the violent burning of the capital. The use of sibilance and airy yet alliteration. See the snakes that they rear, how they hiss in their hair makes this a seething stanza. Stanza 7 closes the poem with the final remarks of the speaker, who makes two key observations about the entire sequence of events. First, the speaker praises the ability of the bard, means Timotheus, to inspire a variety of emotions, could swell the soul to rage or kindle soft desire. Rather than empathizing with either of the two opposing political forces, the Macedonians who sought vengeance and the Persians who had their capital city burned down, the speaker seems to identify with the musician who demonstrates the ability to manipulate those in power as well as the masses of people under their rule. How then does the poet Dryden fit into this dynamic? Perhaps Timotheus is a person of the poet, or perhaps not, and Dryden is telling a cautionary tale about the dangerous power that an artist and art itself can hold over the minds of many. Last slide. The second argument made by the speaker is that, as with previous stanza minds of many, the second argument made by the speaker is that there exists a hierarchy between Timotheus, a pagan bard, and the Catholic musician Saint Cecilia. Saint Cecilia is also a Catholic musician. The speaker champions Christianity when they claim that Saint Cecilia is the technically and spiritually superior musician. On the other hand, it is as though the poem is trying to remind itself that it was written on the occasion of a Christian holiday. There seems to be a certain degree of tension and anxiety when the speaker declares, "Let old Timotheus yield the prize." Then somewhat hesitantly adds, "or both divide the crown." Both means Saint Cecilia and Timotheus. Is this poem about the triumph of Saint Cecilia as the superior musician, inventor, and Christian, or about the anxiety of poet who hesitates between orthodox artistry and the pagan greats? Alexander's Feast is more than a poem that narrates a royal celebration followed by a military confrontation between Macedonia and Persia. It is about the internal tension within Alexander as he responds to Timotheus' musical performance, and it is about the conflict between the mind and the power of art to put it under its control. The poem also addresses points of tension such as those between music and politics, Christianity and paganism, and the poet and his person. Form and content to constantly interact, making this piece not only a breathtaking narrative but also a work of exquisite lyrical beauty. Thank you. In the next slide, we will see symbols and themes of the poem.